Please welcome Sohn co-founder, Evan Sohn.
While the foundation remains so appreciative to Rockefeller University for this honor, the true honor goes to the speakers who grace our stage and you, the audience, who join us year after year. It is your drive to learn and be with us that has helped us grow and expand across the globe with the work of our global Sohn co-chairs to help sick children around the world. We are impressed by your drive, your constant commitment to performing at the top of your field. It has kept us going for 23 years now. Today, if you're interested in engaging your competitive drive and helping raise money for pediatric cancer research, we welcome you to join the Ira Sohn Stock Game. You can link to it via our conference app and read about it in our program. The details are behind me on the screen. To enter, make a donation, and then build your best portfolio, being sure to use at least 3 Sohn stock picks you hear today. This worked great at the Australia conference and raised significant dollars, so please join in and refer your colleagues and friends. We hope you play, and we can't wait to see who wins and claims the title. Playing to win is what our next 2 special speakers are all about. Both overcame childhood leukemia, devastating physical setbacks, and kicked in their competitive drive. Bryan Fletcher is the U.S. Nordic Combined Champion and is a 2-time Olympian, representing the U.S. in both 2014 and 2018. We are also welcoming to the stage Gavin Shamis, the U.S. Luge Youth Champion and Junior Olympian. Bryan offered great mentorship to Gavin on how to navigate unfathomable setbacks to become one of the great athletes of his generation. They funded an organization to help mentor other childhood cancer survivors called ccThrive. And we're honored that today they will share their stories and remind us of why we are here today. Maybe they'll even try their hand at our stock game. Knowing them, they'll push us all to play harder and better. Gavin and Bryan, please join us on the stage.
All right. I would first like to start by saying thank you to the Sohn Conference Foundation for having Gavin and myself here today. It's an honor to be in the room with many of you, let alone standing on stage speaking to you. I'm not an expert in finance nor in pediatric cancer, and my career does not hold a candle to Eli Manning, who's spoken previously at this conference. But then I realized that Gavin and I have one thing that many do not, and that is experience. We are both pediatric cancer survivors, and we are here to tell our story and what we see as important for the future, just like many whom have spoken today. I was diagnosed in 1990 with acute lymphoblastic leukemia at the age of 3, which meant I had about a 75% chance of survival at the time of diagnosis. Growing up in Steamboat Springs also meant that I was going to have to drive 4 hours each direction for chemotherapy treatments. But when the doctors decided that my best course for treatment was intensive chemo, I no longer made that trip with my parents. Instead, I was hospital bound with no immune system, no hair, and when I was eventually stable enough to realize I had no idea how long I would be there, nor if I would ever get to be a normal kid again. Therein lies the point. Kids have their whole lives in front of them, and yet only 4% of funding goes to pediatric cancer research. And that is why we are here today. We need to do more.
I was diagnosed in 2011 when I was 8 years old with the same type of leukemia as Bryan, and began what was supposed to be 3.5 years of nonstop chemo. The first 18 months were just as horrible as they were supposed to be. I was in a cycle of hair loss, nonstop vomiting, and all the other side effects. But then things really got bad. I went through a horror show of complications. One felt like a nail was being driven into my forehead, nonstop. It took 5 months to figure out how to treat the pain, and on the same day that it was finally gone, I went into liver failure. The chemo was destroying my liver, and I had to end my treatment a year early. 20 years after Bryan, I had pretty much the same brutal chemo from the 1970s. Today, 20% of kids still don't make it, Out of the 16,000 kids that are expected to be diagnosed this year, 3,000 won't survive 5 years. And the 13,000 that do will be fighting for the rest of their lives against secondary effects of chemo. In just a few years, the number of survivors will reach over 500,000. They'll have to deal with the challenges like cognitive impairments, like learning disabilities, physical impairments like amputation and nerve damage, and all of the psychological issues.
Every cancer story is different. In fact, the only good news that I received after 1.5 years of chemo was I was now allowed to go home every other week. My yearning just to be a normal kid and not the cancer kid was at an all-time high. At this point, my parents decided to do something different. They decided, you know what, he should be a normal kid as much as possible. And finally, after a year of begging, they decided to sign me up for a Learn to Ski Jump Day in Steamboat Springs. Steamboat Springs, the jumps are right downtown it's where I grew up in my hometown. And I knew from an early age that I had to go off those jumps at least once. When I finally did and got the opportunity to go off, as nervous as can be, my grin was from ear to ear. I was smiling, and my parents knew there was no stopping me now. From that moment forward, I was enrolled in the program, splitting my time between chemotherapy and ski jumping, a unique balance that changed my perspective on everything. I now did everything the doctors asked as efficiently as possible with the hope that I could go home to Steamboat one day sooner and get back to jumping. When I was jumping, my only care was jumping further. Chemo was the last thing on my mind. This dichotomy gave me a reason to fight with all my heart.
Before I was diagnosed, I was a competitive swimmer and dreamed of going to the Olympics. Despite what the doctors said, I was not going to let cancer stop me. A month into treatment, my hemoglobin low and bloated from chemo, I was back in the pool, training 90 minutes a day. I kept swimming when I could throughout treatment. When my legs stopped working due to the chemo, I changed my stroke to butterfly, where the kick is more from the core. I competed and even won a few races. After my treatment ended, I was looking forward to getting back to the pool and my body getting strong again. But I started having what seemed to be violent asthma attacks. The doctors put me on a series of asthma meds, but then I changed. I started saying things like, I don't want to be alive. I was depressed. It turned out to be one of the asthma meds. As soon as I stopped taking them, I was back to myself. But I found out my problem was not asthma. With my immune system rebounding from the chemo, I developed a chloramine sensitivity that meant I could no longer swim indoors. My swim dreams were gone, and it was then that I hit bottom. A few weeks later, by chance, there was a USA Luge screening event in my town, and my parents took me to it, just as something to do. I liked it. I was naturally going on the sled, but when it came time for physical testing, I was a mess. 11 years old, just months past my last chemo, I still looked sick, and another side of the effect of the chemo was that I had not had reflexes in my legs for years. I ran like a 6-year-old. I left feeling that luge was just another thing that I could never do. A few weeks later, I received an invitation to a screening camp at the Olympic Training Center in Lake Placid, New York. That winter, I made cut after cut, and just 11 months after my last chemo, I was named to the USA Luge Junior National Development Team. 2 years later, I won my first national championship title. At 14, I was the 4th seeded under 21 in the country, and this season, I was the top US athlete on the NORAM series. This was not supposed to happen after childhood cancer.
Gavin is right. This is not normal. And that day I found ski jumping changed my life. Little did I know it at the time, but it would shape my life in so many ways. Today I'm proud to say that I'm a cancer survivor, a 2-time Olympian, a world championship bronze medalist, and in 2012 I became one of only 5 Americans ever to win the King's Cup at Holmenkollen in Oslo, Norway. This is about the only connection I have to Eli Manning because the King's Cup is a Super Bowl of Nordic events in which the winner gets to meet the king in Norway. But becoming an elite athlete does not happen overnight. The same can be said in achieving top performance in finance, pediatric cancer research, or any endeavor for that matter. It takes a lot of hard work and dedication and perseverance. Big trees grow slowly, as my coach used to say.
Getting through treatment is no easy task, but there's no reason to give up on who you are and your dreams. When they say you can't do something, Ask what you can do. If it isn't happening, try harder. If it still isn't working, try doing it differently. And if that does not work, pivot and try something else. I was lucky that Luge found me. There's no question that the top priority is survival. That's why we're all here today, raising money to support pediatric cancer research. But the hundreds of thousands of survivors do not need to be defined by their lowest moments. Challenged physically, cognitively, and emotionally, it's not about what you can't do, but what you can. It does not matter what you do. Nordic Combined, Luge, science, medicine, public service, or finance. Everyone should realize their potential even after childhood cancer. This is why Bryan and I founded ccThrive, to improve the long-term quality of life of all childhood cancer survivors, to encourage them to do their best, whatever their challenges, whatever their dreams.
ccThrive's mission is to show that childhood cancer survivors can thrive by providing role models, proving that survivorship is not necessarily defined by diminished physical and cognitive capacities. We encourage children with cancer to be as active as possible and persistent in their full rehabilitation to reach their full potential. As I close out my professional athletic career and transition into a new one, and as Gavin begins his journey towards his Olympic moment, we are striving each day to reach our full potential, and we hope to inspire others to do the same. We would like to express how grateful we are for large foundations like the Sohn Conference Foundation to convene some of the most influential people in pediatric and fund pediatric cancer research and care. Thank you to everyone in the room who is joining this cause.